I was sitting at my family's holiday dinner table, about to share some good news, when my sister-in-law cut me off mid-sentence. "Wait," she said, setting down her glass. "You're still at that little call center? How is that even a career?" The table went quiet. Not the polite kind of quiet, the kind where everyone is waiting to see what happens next. Then my brother Terrell leaned back in his chair and laughed. "She's been there like 4 years. I don't think it's going anywhere." I picked up my fork. I set it back down. I looked at my water glass and said nothing. I did not correct them. Not that night. But what none of them knew was that the job they were laughing at was about to change everything for every single person at that table. My name is Simone. I'm 36 years old, and I need you to hear this story from the beginning. I grew up in Macon, Georgia, the youngest of three in a family where your worth was measured in titles and appearances, what neighborhood you lived in, what kind of car you drove to church on Sunday, what you said when someone asked where you worked. My family cared deeply about how things looked from the outside, and they were not quiet about it. My brothers both followed paths the family could brag about easily. Terrell went into finance. My other brother went into real estate. They wore suits to work. They had business cards with important-sounding words on them. They got applause at cookouts. I graduated and took a customer operations role at a regional tech company in Atlanta. It wasn't glamorous, I knew that, but the company was growing. The pay was steady, and I could see a real future there if I kept my head down and worked smart. The family saw none of that. To them, I worked at a call center, and that was the beginning and end of the story. For years, I was the one they talked over at dinners, the one whose updates no one asked about. My sister-in-law once introduced me at a party as Terrell's little sister who does customer service. I smiled, I shook hands, I drove home and wrote down exactly what she said. I wasn't climbing the ladder they could see, I was building one they didn't even know existed. Has anyone ever made you feel like your work didn't count just because it didn't look impressive enough to them? Like you had to earn the right to be taken seriously by people who were supposed to already be in your corner? Subscribe to this channel right now, because this story is for you. Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear it. Click hype if you already know where this is going. The acquisition announcement came on a Monday morning in October. My company had been in talks for months to acquire a smaller regional firm based in the same metro area. I knew about it. I had been part of the internal planning conversations for the better part of a year. When the formal announcement went out company-wide, my name was listed as one of 3 senior operations directors on the integration leadership team. It was a big deal. Internally, everyone knew it. What I did not know until that same afternoon was which company we were acquiring. I was reading through the target firm's organizational chart when I saw it. Terrell's name, mid-level operations manager. The same company, the same building he had been going to every morning for the past 6 years. My phone rang 40 minutes later. It was Terrell. He didn't say congratulations. He didn't ask how I was. He said, "I saw the email. Can you make sure my position is protected? I need you to put in a good word." I told him the process was formal and that I would not be handling that side of the evaluation directly. He got quiet. Then he said he just needed to know someone on the inside was looking out for him. 2 nights later, my mother had a family dinner. I walked in expecting the conversation to be about me, about my role, about what this meant for my career. Instead, my mother looked at me from across the table and said, "So you can help Terrell, right? You'll make sure he's okay over there?" Not one person at that table asked about my title. Not one person asked what leading the integration actually meant. My sister-in-law smiled and said, "I'm sure Simone can ask someone important over there. She must know a few people after all this time." I looked at Terrell. He looked at his plate. And I understood it all in one moment. He had never told them. For 4 years, he had let our family believe I was still in an entry-level role. He had kept their impression of me small so he could remain the one they looked up to. Every holiday dinner, every cookout, every passing comment about my little call center job, he had let it happen on purpose. I didn't say a word. I reached into my bag, opened my laptop, and turned the screen toward the center of the table. The company-wide announcement email. My full name, my title, Senior Operations Director, Integration Team Lead. The table went silent, the kind of silence that has weight to it. The smell of the sweet potato casserole in the middle of the table suddenly felt very strong, like the room itself had gotten smaller. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Then my mother said, "Well, we didn't know all that." No, they didn't, because Terrell made sure of it. The days after that dinner didn't bring the apology I might have once hoped for. What they brought instead was a very fast and very convenient rewriting of history. Within a week, my mother was telling relatives that the family had always believed in me. "Our Simone has been rising up over there for years," she said on the phone to my aunt, loud enough that I could hear from the next room. "We always knew she would." I pulled her aside later and told her that wasn't true, that they had spent years dismissing everything I did. She tilted her head and said, "Why do you always have to make things difficult?" That was the apology I got. Terrell started calling more frequently after that, but the calls had nothing warm in them. He sent me a typed list of his professional accomplishments. He began copying me on emails he sent to his own manager, emails clearly written to make himself appear indispensable, as though I was supposed to forward them up some chain on his behalf. When I told him again that I had recused myself from the evaluation of his specific role and that a neutral team lead was handling that process, he went back to our mother and told her I was using my position to hold a personal grudge against him. I heard about that from 3 different relatives in the same week. Then came the gathering at my aunt's house. I was standing near the kitchen doorway when Terrell's wife appeared beside me. She spoke quietly, but not quietly enough. "Look," she said, "we all know you've worked hard, but Terrell has a family to support. I hope you're not going to let whatever chip you have on your shoulder affect a real business decision." I heard movement nearby, 2 cousins near the counter, an uncle by the back door. They heard it too. Nobody said a word to correct her. Nobody stepped in. I nodded once. I said, "I hear you," and I went back to the table. I drove home that night with both hands steady on the wheel. The radio was off. I wasn't sad in the usual way. I wasn't scrambling to explain myself or rehearsing arguments in my head. I was something cooler than that. I was clear. I had a folder at home that I had been building for 6 weeks, and it was almost time. Here is what nobody in that family knew. From the first day Terrell called me after the announcement, I had been keeping records. Every text message asking me to protect his role, every voicemail forwarded through my mother, every email he sent to my work account through personal channels. I printed them, I dated them, I organized them. There was one message that stood out from the rest. Terrell had texted me late on a Thursday night, and he was not careful with his words. He said that if I helped him keep his position, things would be a lot smoother at home for all of us. That I knew how the family worked, and it was easier to just handle it quietly. That this was about keeping the family peace. In a corporate acquisition, when someone attempts to influence a decision-maker's professional judgment through personal relationships, that is not just a family problem. It has a formal name. It is a conflict of interest, and the HR and legal teams at any serious company treat it as exactly that. What they didn't know was that every text, every dinner table comment, every call routed through my mother, I had saved every single one. I wasn't going to use it unless I had to. I had handed the evaluation of Terrell's role to a neutral team lead and removed myself from that process entirely. I was clean. I had made sure of it. I didn't need to destroy him. I just needed to make sure that if he tried to destroy me first, I was ready. My cousin Adrian called me on a Tuesday evening while I was working late at my kitchen table. Adrian was the one member of my extended family who had never played the status game.
The family had written her off years ago when she chose to go into electrical work instead of a 4-year degree. She built her own contracting business from the ground up and never once asked them for their approval. I respected her more than most people I knew. She didn't call often. When she did, it mattered. "Hey," she said, "I was at Sunday dinner. I just thought you should know, they're talking about you like you owe Terrell something, like the only reason you have your job is to be useful to him." She paused. "I didn't think that was right without you knowing." I thanked her. We talked for a while, not about strategy, not about what to do next, just about how exhausting it was to love people who only saw you when they needed something. She understood that language without me having to translate it. Back in the family orbit, the confidence had shifted. Terrell had started hinting to relatives that his position was secure, that things were handled, that Simone had made sure of it. He said this before any decision had been made. The assumption moved through the family like it was already fact. His wife began organizing a celebration dinner when the news was made official. Then my HR director called. Someone at the acquired firm had been making informal inquiries about my involvement in the evaluation of certain roles, asking questions to people they shouldn't have been asking. The thread traced back to a contact Terrell had reached out to directly, someone he had apparently told that I was managing his specific role personally. I was sitting at my desk when I got that call. The room was quiet. The hum of my laptop fan was the only sound. I listened to my HR director, carefully. I told her I had documentation. I asked her if she wanted me to send it to legal. She said yes. I opened the folder. I made the call. The evaluation team completed their work on a Thursday. Terrell's role was identified as redundant, not by me, not because of anything I had done. The neutral team lead reviewed the structure of his department and determined that the function overlapped with 3 existing roles on our side. His position was eliminated that Friday afternoon. By Sunday, the celebration dinner had become something else entirely. I got a call from my mother telling me the family was gathering and that I needed to come. Her voice was tight. I said I would be there. I walked into my mother's living room and the air was thick with unspoken anger. The furniture smelled faintly of the candles my mother always burned on weekends, vanilla and something warmer underneath, but nothing about the room felt warm. My mother was in her usual chair at the center. Terrell was on the couch with his arms crossed. His wife was on her feet before I even closed the door behind me. "You could have protected him," she said. "You had the power to do something and you chose not to. That's your brother, Simone. That's family." I didn't answer her right away. I sat down, I set my bag on the floor, I reached inside and placed a printed folder on the coffee table in front of me. Then I started talking. I walked through every page slowly and clearly. The 14 text messages from Terrell's personal number to mine, asking me to intervene in the evaluation, the 2 voicemails he left through our mother, asking her to pass along his request, the email he sent to a contact at our firm, one he had no professional relationship with, asking questions about my role in the process, the formal HR flag that my director had brought to me because someone was making unauthorized inquiries using my name. The room was very quiet, the kind of quiet where you can hear people breathing. I looked at Terrell and kept my voice level. "I recused myself from your evaluation completely. A neutral team lead made every decision about your role without any input from me. I did that to protect both of us, and while I was doing that, you were telling this family I was holding a grudge against you." He looked at the table. I turned to my mother. "You have told people for years that I worked at a little call center. You let that be the story about me. I am the senior operations director who just led a multi-million-dollar acquisition from start to finish. I needed you to see that in writing because clearly saying it out loud was never enough." My mother opened her mouth. She closed it. I stood up. I left the folder on the table. I picked up my bag and I walked to the door. No shouting, no tears, just the sound of my own footsteps across the hardwood floor, and then the soft, firm click of the front door closing behind me. The acquisition closed cleanly 2 weeks later. My HR director sent a formal note to my file commending how I had managed the conflict of interest situation. My VP stopped by my office to say it directly, that the way I had handled the pressure, the documentation, the recusal, all of it was exactly the kind of judgment that builds long-term credibility. I sat with that for a moment before I said thank you. Terrell landed a new position at a different company about 3 months later. We don't have the kind of relationship we probably should have built over 30 years, but what's left between us now is at least honest. No more performances, no more pretending. The distance is real, and we both know why it's there. My mother called on a Wednesday evening, about 3 weeks after the living room confrontation. She didn't say she was sorry. She isn't someone who uses that word easily, and I've made my peace with that. What she said was, "I didn't know how far you'd come. I should have been paying more attention." I appreciated her saying it. I meant it, even though I also knew it was not the whole thing I had needed from her for a long time. Adrian sent me a text the morning after the acquisition was announced complete. It was 4 words. "They know now, cousin." I read it twice and smiled. Here is the thing I want to leave you with. They mocked the job, but the job was never the point. The point was that I walked into that building every single morning for years, and I built something real and solid and mine, while the people who were supposed to believe in me were too busy deciding I wasn't worth watching closely enough to see it. They missed it. That's not my loss. That's theirs. Has your family ever looked at what you do every day and decided it didn't count? Have you ever had to stand in a room full of people who share your last name and prove that your work is real? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Your work is real. Your progress is real. Subscribe to this community because it is built for everyone who kept building while others kept doubting. Click hype to help this story reach others who need it. Did this story hit home? Let me know by liking the video and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Click hype to help this story find others who felt the same way. Your support makes a huge difference.